Hi everyone, here's a little December 2022 update on all the tools, a couple of new features in all the different tools. So let's start with the log cleaner. So the main novelty here is in the universal cleaner. Let's get a file, usual stuff, and we'll just go through that. Okay, here's all my variables, still that fill option that we talked about in a previous video. One of the novelties is that for some reason there was a small bug that the filters were not always remembered correctly, and neither were some of the calculated variables. So that is now fixed. And another novelty is if you are trying to downsample a high frequency file in something that is still high frequency, where you can now downsample something to say 100 milliseconds instead of having to round to at least 1 second. So that's it for the log cleaner. Next up is the crossover chart. Now the big novelty here is the fact that, let's create a new element here. You can now decide that you do not want to have this nice Bezier curve, but you actually want to have straight lines. And you could click on straight lines here, and that will do that for you. You now have a straight line. And you can also set that as the default by going into the options, and you go to miscellaneous, and at the very end you can say always render a straight line by default. I click that here, and if I go and add a new line graphically, it is now displayed like that, but I can at any time go individually and say no, this one specifically I would like to see in Bezier. And that's it. That's the novelty for the crossover chart. Moving on. The third one here is this in the Polar Manager. So you might recall that you could click anywhere in one of the columns, right click and say set true and angle value for all. Well, this could only apply to the entire column, but there are times where you just want to modify some of them. So here I can keep the control key down on my Windows keyboard and select only those and say same true and angle value. Let's bring them back to 60 again. And it has brought all of those back to 60. So that's occasionally useful when, especially for light wind, polar, your targets might be very low, so you want to have your first points at 65 and then the following at 60. So that's kind of useful. And let's now move on to race replay. So the major change here happens in the XY graph. So let's open one of those. And the change is related to the presets. Now the presets used to be little XML files, and they have now been moved to JSON files. And there's a big reason for that, but that will be revealed a bit later in a couple of weeks, possibly. But in the meantime, there is one added value. The problem with the XML files is it was not able to remember that you had trend lines per sale. So right now, if I create trend lines per sale, here they are, and I can save that preset. I'll call it boat speed versus truant speed by sale, and I save that, and I'll even mark it as a favorite down here. And while we're at it, why not also make a favorite by, say, by tack? So let's now color things by tack, remove all those trend lines, and say that we want to have trend lines by tack this time. And I will also save this preset as a favorite. Okay, here we go, boat speed versus truant speed by sail. Save that. Oh, no, by tack, not by sail. By tack, here we go. And add this as a favorite. And now when I move from one to the other, I'm getting all my trend lines and I don't have to rerun them every time. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed those new features.